You'll never be free until you learn to let go of what's been quietly killing your spirit. Some people are not your supporters. They're your shackles. They smile in your face, drain your energy, and make you feel guilty for wanting space. And the worst part, you've convinced yourself it's love. That's the lie, my friends. We've been taught that cutting people off is cruel, but the real cruelty is staying stuck, suffocating just to make others comfortable. Before we dive deep, hit that like button and press subscribe, because what you're about to hear might just unlock the peace you've been chasing for years. Hey folks, imagine you're trying to run a race with 5 people hanging off your back. Every step you take, they whisper, "Don't leave me." But they're not running. They're not helping. They're just holding on. You're not slow. You're burdened. You're not lost. You're carrying too much. And some of that weight, it has names, faces, smiles, memories. But here's the truth. Not everyone from your past belongs in your future, and you can't heal in the same space that keeps hurting you. So today, we cut the rope. Say it with me. Write it in the comments. I choose peace. Let them see it. Let you feel it. Stay with me. Number 1. The identity leech. Some people don't love you. They love the version of you that serves their comfort. There's a reason you feel drained around certain people, even when nothing's said out loud. It's not always about what they take. It's about what they prevent. My friends, the most dangerous person in your life might not be the one who screams at you, but the one who subtly resists your growth, the one who smiles when you stay small, the one who doesn't fight you, they freeze you. That's the identity leech. Imagine you're a tree meant to grow tall, strong, wide, reaching toward light and sky. But someone tied a rope around your trunk years ago, and every time you start to stretch, that rope tightens. It doesn't cut you, it doesn't hurt at first, it just limits you. And because it doesn't scream, you assume it's not a problem. But over time, that quiet resistance becomes a cage. You tell yourself, they've always been there for me, or they just care. But what they really care about is you staying the same. Now you start asking yourself, am I being selfish for wanting more? What if I lose them if I change? What if they're right and I'm just chasing something that doesn't exist? These thoughts are common because the identity leech doesn't attack your dream, they plant doubt in it. They don't insult your progress, they question the need for it. And suddenly, you're explaining yourself to someone who doesn't want to understand, just to keep the peace. But folks, peace built on suppression isn't peace, it's quiet suffering. Seneca once wrote, "As is a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is." And here's the hard truth, the old you that they love so much, that version of you was shaped by survival, not freedom. It existed to make others comfortable. It learned to shrink, to please, to adapt just to avoid rejection. But growth demands discomfort. Growth demands separation. And not everyone can follow where you're going. They'll say things like, "You've changed," or "You're not like you used to be." But think about it, isn't that the point? Would you want to be stuck in the same mindset, the same habits, the same broken cycles you were in 3 years ago? Would you rather be liked for your old self or respected for the new one? Still, letting go of these people hurts. It feels like betrayal. You'll start remembering the good times, the jokes, the loyalty, the shared pain. But here's the thing, they were never loyal to your evolution, only your familiarity. The moment you stopped reflecting their insecurities, you became a threat. The moment you wanted more, they labeled you arrogant or too much. This isn't about hate. This isn't about cutting people off to feel superior. This is about reclaiming your identity from those who benefited from your confusion. Ask yourself this: If you weren't scared of losing them, what would you be doing differently right now? If their opinion didn't weigh on your mind, how much higher would you aim? How much louder would you speak? How much more boldly would you move? Because the people who are meant for you, really meant for you, they won't be threatened by your wings. They'll hand you wind. They won't mock your new path. They'll walk beside it or bless it from afar. But the identity leech? They'll cling. They'll remind you who you used to be, not out of love, but out of control, because your glow disrupts their comfort zone. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Sometimes the impediment is not fear, failure, or finances, but familiarity. You can't rise if you keep returning to the places that taught you to crawl. So what do you do now? You make a decision, a brave one. You accept that not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. You stop explaining your transformation. You stop apologizing for your clarity. You stop watering dead roots hoping they'll bloom again. You honor the version of you that survived. Yes, but you serve the version that's rising. And that version has no room for leeches, only lifters. Write this in the comments. I won't shrink for anyone. Say it. Feel it. Let them see that you're not here to maintain comfort zones. You're here to build empires. You're not here to reflect someone else's story. You're here to write your own. And the pen is finally back in your hand. Number 2. The chaos dealer. Not every fire in your life needs your hands to put it out. Some people just enjoy watching you burn with them. My friends, some people don't bring problems. They are the problem. Not because they're loud, not because they're evil, but because their life is a never-ending storm and they've made your calm their personal shelter. That's the chaos dealer, the one who calls you when their world is falling apart, but disappears when yours does. The one who makes drama feel like connection. The one who doesn't want healing. They want your attention. Imagine you're standing in a quiet garden, sunlight, breeze, peace. And suddenly, someone runs in with muddy boots, loud cries, and a broken story. You drop everything to help them. You offer your shoulder, your time, your heart. They say thank you. They promise change. And just when you clean up the mess, they do it again and again. Until one day, you realize you're not their friend. You're their firefighter, their crisis counselor, their unpaid emotional janitor. You start to wonder, am I being selfish if I don't answer their call this time? What if they really need me? What if something bad happens and I wasn't there? Let me tell you something, folks. Love doesn't come with a leash. And support isn't measured by how much chaos you're willing to absorb. The chaos dealer isn't looking for peace. They're looking for an audience. They don't grow from pain, they perform with it. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But the chaos dealer wants to dye your soul with their drama. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their dependence for loyalty, their breakdowns for bonding, their mess for meaning. You start to feel responsible for them. You start showing up not because you want to, but because you feel guilty if you don't. And guilt, my friends, is not love. It's emotional blackmail, wrapped in words like, "You're the only one I can talk to," or "You always know what to say," or worse, "If you leave, I don't know what I'll do." That's not affection. That's manipulation. And here's the harsh truth. They're not addicted to your love. They're addicted to your stability. Because their life is a spinning wheel, and you're the only thing that feels still. But instead of healing, they feed on your stillness. Until you're the one spinning. They want to talk but never listen. They want comfort but never change. They want presence but never responsibility. You show up over and over, thinking maybe this time they'll get it. Maybe this time your support will inspire them. But here's what the Stoics taught. We cannot control others, only ourselves. And if they haven't changed after all your time, energy, advice, and care, it's not because you failed, it's because they never planned to. The chaos dealer doesn't want solutions. They want spectators, and yet letting go is hard. You remember their tears, their pain, their moments of vulnerability. You think, I can't just abandon them. But abandoning yourself, that's okay. Folks, don't confuse sacrifice with service. Don't confuse empathy with enslavement. Ask yourself, do I feel better after we talk, or heavier? Do they ever ask about my life, my peace, my struggles? Or is every conversation a monologue where I'm the audience? And if the answer stings, it's because it's honest. Let me hit you with another visual. Picture your emotional energy as a glass of water. You keep pouring into others. But the chaos dealer, their glass has no bottom. No matter how much you give, they're still thirsty, still broken, still in crisis. And one day you look at your own cup and it's dry, not a drop left. And they don't even notice. That's when you realize this was never mutual. You were the reservoir. They were the drain. Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you, not people who deplete you, not people who guilt you into loyalty, not people who define friendship by how available you are to their pain while being blind to yours. So what do? You start by stepping back, not in hate, but in honor, not in coldness, but in clarity. You let their crisis ring unanswered. You let their chaos stay theirs. You give space, not as punishment, but as proof that you're done bleeding for people who refuse to heal. Will they lash out? Maybe. Will they call you selfish? Probably. But that's because your distance threatens their dependency. And here's where you rise. You remind yourself, your peace isn't a volunteer service. Your calm isn't a charity. Your mind isn't a dumping ground. You are not built to be someone else's emotional landfill. You are built to rise. Write this in the comments. I protect my calm. Let them see it. Let them hear it. Let yourself believe it. Say it for the version of you that spent too many nights fixing storms you didn't start. And stay with me, because next, we face a different kind of user. Not the one who drags you down, but the one who claps for you with a smile and competes with you in silence. The conditional loyalist is up next, and they only show up when you're not shining too bright. Number 3, the conditional loyalist. Some people don't walk beside you, they walk behind you, quietly hoping you trip. There's a certain type of person that doesn't hate you, they don't attack you, they don't argue with your goals or insult your growth. No, they stay close, they smile, they clap, they might even help from time to time, but only as long as your light doesn't outshine theirs. That's the conditional loyalist. They're not against you unless you start to rise. Then suddenly they become very, very quiet. My friends, these people thrive in your almost. Almost successful, almost happy, almost healed. Because your potential doesn't scare them, it's your arrival that does. The moment you actually become what you've been working toward, that's when their energy changes. That's when their support turns into subtle shade. That's when the congrats start coming with a bitter aftertaste. Imagine you're climbing a mountain, step by step, storm after storm. You slip, you struggle, but you keep going. And all the while, someone's behind you saying, "You got this. I'm proud of you. We're in this together." Feels good, right? But the higher you climb, the more those words feel hollow. They don't cheer like they used to. They don't ask how the journey feels. Instead, they start pointing out your mistakes, minimizing your wins, comparing your steps to theirs. "Must be nice," they say. "I wish I had your luck." Luck? They saw your pain, They watched you grind. But now that you're seeing results, they act like you cheated. And here's where the truth hits hard. They were never clapping for you. They were clapping for the version of you that still made them feel superior. You might start doubting yourself, asking questions like, am I changing? Am I too focused on success? Should I slow down just to keep them close? And this right here is the trap. The conditional loyalist doesn't tell you to fail, they just make you feel guilty for winning. They're the friend who supports you until your glow makes them uncomfortable, until your ambition exposes their complacency, until your courage highlights their fear. Seneca warned us, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And folks, you've faced adversity, you've been tested. But the moment you start passing those tests, this so-called loyalty wavers, because now they feel exposed, not by your words, but by your progress. And it's subtle. You won't catch it at first. A missed call here, a dry response there, a birthday forgotten, a big win ignored. At first, you'll make excuses for them. They're just busy. They probably didn't see it. But deep down, you'll feel the shift. It's not about the event, it's about the energy. You're not imagining it. They see you rising, and they don't know how to stand beside you without shrinking. So why do we keep them around? Because we remember who they were when we were weak, when we were low, when we were stuck. And we confuse history with loyalty. But let me be clear, time spent together is not proof of support. Loyalty isn't about who stayed the longest. It's about who stayed true when you evolved. You're not wrong for growing. You're not arrogant for shining. You're not disloyal for creating space from someone who only loved you small. That's not disloyalty. That's clarity. Still, it's hard. Cutting off a conditional loyalist doesn't come with one big betrayal. It comes with 1,000 tiny silences. It comes with a sense of mourning. You grieve the friendship, the bond, the memories. But eventually, you realize those memories were rooted in you being less than what you're becoming. And that's not friendship, that's control. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So ask yourself, how do you feel when they're around? Inspired, energized, or do you feel smaller, second-guessing yourself, editing your wins just to keep the peace? You can't keep watering down your greatness to fit into cups that were never meant to hold it. You can't keep pausing your life so someone else doesn't feel left behind. You've done the work, you've stayed humble, you've included them in your journey. But if they can't clap when you rise, they don't deserve front row seats to your success. So what do? You stop shrinking. You stop softening your glow. You stop hiding your hunger. You keep growing, even if it means growing alone for a while. You honor the version of you that stayed loyal, even to the wrong people. And now you choose different. Write this in the comments. I rise without apology. Say it, feel it, show them and show yourself that you're no longer available for half-hearted loyalty. You are not obligated to keep people close who can't celebrate your light without comparison. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because next we're exposing someone even more subtle, the dream dismantler. They don't tell you you can't. They just plant the seed of doubt and call it realism. And that seed, it's been growing inside you for far too long. Number 4, the dream dismantler. Some people don't destroy your dreams with hate. They do it with doubt, disguised as concern. My friends, let's get real about one of the most silent, suffocating forces in your life. The person who doesn't yell, doesn't mock, doesn't openly sabotage, but always finds a way to chip away at your belief in yourself. This is the dream dismantler, and they're not easy to spot because they don't walk in the room and say, "That'll never work." No, They lean in, lower their voice, smile, and say things like, "Are you sure?" or "Don't get your hopes up too high." They don't break your spirit in one blow, they dissolve it. Word by word, doubt by doubt. Imagine you've got a spark in your hands, small but real, a dream, an idea, a vision. You're guarding it, nurturing it, trying to give it life. And then along comes someone you trust, someone close. They don't stomp it out, no, they blow on it. Just a little. Just enough to make you question if the flame is even worth protecting. It's not practical. The market's too saturated. What if you fail? And you nod, you smile, you think maybe they're right. That's how dreams die, not with insults, but with reasonable sounding fear. And the hardest part, you think they're being helpful, you think they care, you think they're just being realistic. But realism without vision is just a cage. And you were not born to live in a box built by someone else's fear. Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." But the dream dismantler doesn't want you to dare. Because if you do, and if you succeed, it will reveal that their small thinking was a choice, not a truth, and that terrifies them. So they call themselves your voice of reason. But what they really are is the voice of hesitation, the voice that creeps in right before a big leap, the whisper that says, "Maybe next year." The warning that sounds wise but is rooted in fear. And if you're not grounded, if you're not clear on who you are and what you want, you'll listen to them. And worse, you'll believe them. Ask yourself, how many times have you hesitated on something that lit your soul on fire, just because one person gave you a sideways look? How many times did you pause your progress because someone said it might not work? And let's be honest, this doesn't come from strangers. It comes from family, from childhood friends, from that one person you always looked up to. It comes from people whose own dreams died quietly years ago. And now they walk around holding buckets of water, not to help, but to douse anything that dares to burn. Why? Because your fire reminds them of everything they gave up on. That's why they can't help themselves. When you say, "I'm launching something," they say, "In this economy." When you say, "I'm changing careers," they say, "Is that smart?" When you say, "I'm building something real," they say, "Don't get too excited." And you think, maybe they're just trying to protect me. But here's the truth. You don't protect people by shrinking them. You protect them by believing in their power, even when the world doesn't. And the dream dismantler never believed. Not in their own dreams, not in yours. They don't want to crush you. They just want you to stay reachable, familiar, safe, because your elevation threatens their comfort. Your clarity threatens their confusion. Your hope shines too bright for the darkness they've chosen to live in. And you've got to decide, do I want to be understood by the people around me? Or do I want to live a life that actually reflects who I am? Because often, you can't have both. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. In the same way, stop explaining why your dream matters. Stop watering it down to make it more palatable. Stop reshaping it to fit in their frame. Be it, build it, live it. Because here's what happens when you let the dream dismantler too close. You start internalizing their doubt. You hear their voice and start mistaking it for your own. You become your own skeptic, your own leash. But my friends, dreams are not fragile. They're fire. And yes, fire burns. It costs, it demands, but it also creates. The world you want, the peace you crave, the freedom you're chasing, it's on the other side of that fire. And no one gets there by listening to people who never left the shore. So what do? You stop asking for permission to dream out loud. You stop explaining yourself to people who've never built anything. You stop shrinking your fire just because someone else lives in fear of burning. You start protecting your spark like your future depends on it, because it does. You build, you move, you rise, and if they don't clap, let them watch. Write this in the comments. I protect my fire. Say it loud. Say it clear. Let them hear it. Let you believe it. No more explaining. No more doubting. No more dimming to keep others comfortable. Number 5, the silent anchor. Some people don't hold you back. They just never help you move forward. This one's tricky, my friends, because they don't argue, they don't judge, they don't plant doubt. They simply don't show up. They nod when you speak. They smile when you win. But they never push, never challenge, never encourage. This is the silent anchor, and they're not dragging you down with chains, they're holding you with stillness. Imagine a boat tied to a dock. No storm, no waves, just still water. You think you're free, but every time you try to move, you stay in place. That's what it feels like being connected to someone who never opposes you, but never believes in you either. They say they support you, but their energy says, don't go too far. They're not your enemy, but they're not your fuel. And the danger, they're often the ones you feel most comfortable with because they never cause conflict. But growth requires friction, and these people, they keep you comfortable enough to stay average. Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. But there's no action when you're surrounded by passivity. You can't rise with dead weight tied to your ankle. So what do? You cut the quiet ties. You create space. You choose force over familiarity, because your future doesn't need spectators. It needs soldiers. Write this in the comments. I choose forward. Let it echo. Let them see the shift. If this opened your eyes, hit like, press subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Because freedom isn't just about walking away from what's toxic, it's about refusing to settle for what's stagnant. At Stoic Journal, we don't just talk change, we live it. Stay bold, stay grounded, stay free.